background?
Salesman?
Business.
Okay.
Business development.
Okay.
We're live. It's all pre-recorded. If you want to say anything, you do Stu's podcast a lot, but we'll clean it up.
Okay, clean it up.
Good.
That's what we do. All right, Jay, you ready?
Ready.
Coffee in hand.
Let's go.
We're ready
Coffee
to rock.
in hand. Let's do some coffee.
I know. I'm like, where did you get that coffee?
I know. Did you want some?
Do they do
Mix
lattes? Do they do lattes?
No.
No?
This one does.
Okay. I'm okay.
Hey everybody, this is the Jay Young Show, and man, we got Jordan Soto. Jordan,
Hello.
man, we're at NAPE in Houston,
Yes.
an incredible conference, one of
Exhibition.
the biggest onshore oil and gas conference in the country, in the world, maybe.
I
It
think
probably
so.
is in the world because
Yeah.
it is the onshore for Texas or
Yeah.
for the United States. But anyway, great show. There's thousands and thousands of people here. We have a great booth right up front, so everybody gets to see us when they walk in, and we're doing a great interview right now.
This might be the best location in the whole
I
place.
think so.
I know.
I was telling him,
Well,
I'm like, this is like front row seating right
I
here.
walked in this morning looking for you guys, and I wasn't even paying attention when I walked in the door, and I walked back to the back corner
Oh, no.
where podcasters normally are. You guys got the sweet spot.
We do. Yeah.
I
Catbird.
know. There's
Well,
like,
we kind of Jay Young Show, King Operating, our company, what we do, oil and gas, and so we just thought we'd put it all together and put it right here for you, Doug. So this is Doug Sandridge,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir.
You live in Colorado.
Yes, sir.
Golden.
You're with Golden, Colorado.
Golden, Colorado.
That's where the Coors beer
Exactly.
flies. What a! I don't see how you get any
It's
work
so
done.
fun, honestly. Like, it's such a fun little city
There's
or town.
a bar right across the street from the brewery, and their advertising is the freshest Coors in the country.
I love that.
I don't. Yeah, that would be. Right?
Yes, it really
Coming
would.
off the mountains,
Yeah,
and
right there.
why wouldn't it be? Man, awesome. So, how long have you been in the oil and gas business?
Oh boy, I hate to tell you this. I was reminiscing the other day. I started my very first job in the oil business when I was in high school in Midland, Texas, in August of 1975.
Oh my goodness.
So that means this August will be 50 years.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
Well,
I know.
congratulations.
Can you
That's
believe
quite
that?
a feat. I feel
Wow,
like
you look
there
great.
needs to be like a plaque or something like that. That's like, all right, we've completed this amount of years in the energy industry, and like
Yeah.
it's an award.
That 50 years just snuck up on me.
Man.
Hey, but
awesome.
time flies when you're having fun. So you're in the operations side,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
So tell us a little bit about that, because you dabble in a few different places from what our conversation. So
Sure.
nuclear, and that's kind of a newer one. Or?
Yes, so my daytime job is oil and gas exploration and production. I work for a company called Fulcrum Energy in
Okay,
Denver.
very fun.
And we mostly buy properties, producing properties.
Okay.
And we're either buying distressed properties or properties that we think we can buy at the right price and
Right.
improve production, improve operations, improve accounting, whatever.
So what does that mean? What does improving all
So
of that
we buy
mean?
a property that's making 1,000 barrels a day, and then we can do some workovers, improve the production, maybe make the production 1,200 or 1,500 barrels a day. So we bought 1,000 barrels a day, but we can, through efficiencies and better operating techniques, improve the amount of oil, and then maybe do it more efficiently, more cost effectively. So not only can we raise the production, but we can also lower the cost.
Hey Jay, this is a good guy to know. I
I
think.
know, man. I tell you what, sounds wonderful.
Yeah,
Sure,
you're like,
well-
these are all the things I want.
It's easy to say, it's a lot harder to do.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Find the right project at the right price, and
I
then
mean, it's just
Right.
like everything. It's like real estate or
Yeah, of course.
people just forget about it. They don't want it anymore, and they're
Right.
like, "We're not going to spend any money," or either they don't have
Exactly.
any money, or they don't want to spend any money, or they just kind of let it sit like some of the old houses in these
Yeah.
towns, and you just go, "Hey, I can buy that, and I can value and
Exactly.
increase it, or improve it, and let it rip." So that's good.
Yeah, and we do some of our own drilling as well.
Okay.
Typically that's not our strong suit, but we're doing more and more drilling of our own now. And typically, say 5 years ago, we just buy producing properties.
Got it.
Now we do have some properties where we actually drill our own wells.
What is the reason for the shift?
A lot of operators aren't that competent, so we
Oh.
eventually decided that we just better operate our own properties.
Fair enough.
So,
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, and some too. I mean, it's like our focus is drilling wells, and some of the wells that we have that right now are not producing as well as they probably should. We probably need to go back or have another team that just does that. So we just hired a guy, Ryan, in our office that will increase value and concentrate on that part of it. But
Got
yeah,
it.
I can see how
Yeah.
people just kind of let it go, and they're like, our focus is on developing this property. We're going to drill, and so it's kind of like you kind of forget about it, if you will.
Yeah,
Right.
there's all sorts of reasons we buy properties.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can buy them out of bankruptcy. You know, the
Okay.
bankruptcy court doesn't want to operate properties, so they're
Right.
going to sell them. So you might get them priced right. You might
Yeah.
have people who are wanting to exit a certain basin. They're not
Yeah.
interested in working in Colorado anymore or whatever. So there's
Yeah.
a whole variety of reasons you might buy the properties, but we're buying properties that we can improve.
Yeah.
And eventually, most likely sell them. We don't have a lot of legacy properties. We're not like Exxon where we drill a property and keep it for 70 years. You know, we're
Right.
going to improve it, and when the time is right and the buyer is right, we'll probably sell it to someone else.
Okay, enter and exit. It's a lot of exit strategy talk that
Yeah.
we've been having
Yeah.
through NAPE, which, NAPE, where deals happen, so, you
This
get
where
in,
deals
you get
happen.
out. And
This is Nate. What's the biggest deal that you did, or what's the best deal, I guess, you did? Or what, in your career? Almost 50 years here. This guy looks like he's 35 years old. He's been in the business almost 50 years now, but you've had, what is one of the best deals that you've ever, let's
That's a
say you
good
bought
question.
it for this and you put this much money into it, or
Yeah.
and you sold it for that, what?
The project I'm working on right now, I think was an interesting project because back in the early 2000s, after the Barnett Shale was developed, everybody's looking for the next shale play.
Right.
Everybody's looking, where are we going to go? And EOG, one of the great
Yes.
developers of projects and shale plays, they had an idea that the Niobrara Shale in Colorado could be a productive oil shale play.
Yeah.
And so they went up into the mountains of Colorado in a place that we call North Park. It's in Jackson County.
Yeah.
And they started fiddling around, drilling wells, and doing a lot of science to see if they could make that shale work. And they did.
Oh, well,
And
there
so
you go.
now that basin, North Park Basin, is really just an extension of the big Niobrara play that takes place on the Front Range, the big Weld County.
Wow.
But they went up there. Originally, it was all deposited in the same shallow sea environment, and then the mountains separated it. The mountains came in and separated, so you have basically two basins, but it's always depositionally almost identical. And so EOG had this idea that they could make shale work up near Steamboat, up in Jackson County,
Yeah.
that they could come down to the Front Range. And so once EOG drilled the first two horizontal Niobrara wells in Colorado. The initial wells that were drilled to prove up this concept were drilled on our property up in North Park
Oh,
in
wow.
Jackson
Well,
County.
that's nice.
Really?
I mean,
But
that's
then
great.
it's kind of small potatoes for them. We had 150,000 acres. Let's go down to the Front Range and buy 1 million or 2 million acres. And of course, at that time, that was the play. That's what Chesapeake did. You go in, you have a concept, and then you buy up all the acreage before you drill any wells.
Yeah.
So they went in and bought a bunch of acreage in
Wow.
the Front Range.
Oh, wow.
And then they drilled successfully wells there, and then that caused the explosion of activity in the Front
Got
Range.
it.
Well, at that time, they just drilled a few wells in North Park. So myself and several other people, we bought EOG's properties in North Park and decided we would try and develop that project. So,
Yeah.
so we developed it, and then once we had expanded the footprint of the property, bought additional acreage, reduced drilling costs, improved the EURs. Once we had done all that, we sold it to Sandridge Energy, which is coincidentally no relationship to
your
me.
brother?
No, total coincidence. They sold it to Sandridge Energy,
Yeah.
and I went to work for them. And they originally hired me on a 30-day contract, which extended every 30 days for 5 years. And then when they sold it, I was the last one walking out the door.
Wow.
And they sold it to this Fulcrum Energy in Denver. So
Wow.
I'm still working on the same project
Same project.
Oh, wow.
for the new company.
In Weld County or in
No, up in the mountains, up
Up
in
the
Jackson County near Steamboat.
Now, do you have to drill deeper up there since it's a big, tall mountain? Is the formation the same?
That's a good question.
It-
I love Steamboat.
same
Have you
deal?
been to Steamboat?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Oh,
It's
I
not.
love
It's
it.
not. We don't drill any deeper, really.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
No, it's all been uplifted though. So that's the interesting thing is our producing formation is not subsea. Normally you talk about subsea
Oh.
depths.
Yeah.
You know how you got a surface depth and you got a subsea depth.
Right.
Our subsurface depths are above sea level.
Oh my gosh.
And so I don't know if
funny.
there's any other fields in the U.S. There probably is, but I don't know if there's any other fields in the U.S.
Yeah.
where the bottom hole locations are actually above sea level.
So have they thought
Wow.
about doing this in any other mountain ranges, like the Appalachian Mountains or anything like that, or is not the same like?
I don't
path?
think it's really the same. This was all depositionally one depositional environment and it was just separated by the formation of
Got
the
it.
mountains.
Okay.
It's possible, but I'm not aware of it anywhere
Okay,
else.
fair enough.
So how did you get started with that deal, or how did you get the money to do the?
Yeah.
Jackson, what
Yeah,
Jackson County?
Jackson County, yep.
How'd you come to the idea? Where'd the money come from?
Well,
I mean, it's just
Yeah.
you know, back in those days, a lot of people were putting together private equity deals. You go to different companies, EGP or whatever. We went to Yorktown Partners out of New York.
Yorktown, okay.
Okay, and we borrowed the money from, they were our partner, and they put in a bunch of money, and we put in some of our own money, and then once we had spent all the money and drilled all the wells and developed it and bought the acreage, then we had to make a decision. We're going to go back and try and get another tranche of money, or are we going to sell it? And we ended up selling it to Sandridge Energy. But it was a typical private equity type of deal that was prevalent back in
And it worked.
2013,
Yeah.
20, as long as you had buyers. Bigger companies who were wanting project development, they couldn't do it themselves. They wanted companies like us to bring them a project that was ready on a plate for them to.
Now, wait a minute. Now did EOG do that, or did you sell it to EOG, or how did that?
EOG had the original idea. I mean, EOG, they're the brilliant ones. You
Yeah.
know, they had the idea to do this. But after they drilled a few wells up there, they decided that North Park was kind of too small time for them. They didn't have time to waste on something that was only 150,000 acres.
Yeah.
They wanted to go someplace where they could buy millions of acres.
Right.
And so they divested it, and we were a small outfit, and we picked it up and ran with it from there. So it was originally EOG. We bought it, and then we sold it to Sandridge, and now
Yeah.
Fulcrum owns it.
Interesting.
Okay. So, and Sandridge bought it, sold it to Fulcrum,
Yep.
and that's where you are today.
Yes, sir.
So I guess there's a big running room on this project.
There is. Yeah.
And but you're not really the driller. You're more of the.
No, we are drilling it as well. Yeah, I mean we contract.
So you do drill a little bit.
Yeah,
There's a lot of running room.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we're drilling it ourselves.
Okay. Good.
So what's next?
What's next? Well, we got our hands full on this project for sure, and we do other projects. We got projects in North Dakota, Wyoming, and Texas, and other places. So
Yeah.
we have projects all over the place. I'm sort of cubbyholed in this project since I've worked on it for so long. So I at some point maybe I'll work on other projects in our company, but right now
Yeah.
it's a full-time job for me.
Fair enough.
But I work. That's my day job.
Yeah.
But
Are
I'm
you a
also
geologist or engineer?
a landman.
You're a landman.
Yeah, I'm-
All right.
Oh,
I'm a
There you go.
landman.
Here we go.
go.
We're going
Here we
to
go.
talk about
Here's
the
the next
Landman
question.
show. True or
Okay.
false? How many facts are there in that show that are real? I don't know.
There's a few,
Yeah?
but it's entertaining.
It's entertainment. I mean, you have to take it with a grain of salt.
It's
Do you
fun-
personally watch the show?
I watched it. It's funny because originally I asked my wife if she wanted to watch the show. And she said, no, I don't like Taylor Sheridan stuff. It's too violent and too much
Oh.
skin. And, I don't want to watch it. So I said, okay, I'll watch it myself. And then about a week later, she came home. And this isn't her exact words. So if she listens to this, she'll say, that's not what I said. But essentially, she said, I think I'll watch it. And I was like, okay, why? And it's like everywhere you go, people
Right,
ask about it. They want to
yes.
talk about it.
Uh-huh.
And for most of her friends, the only landman they know she's married to.
Yeah.
And they're
I was
asking
gonna
questions.
say, why wouldn't they?
Right.
So they're asking her questions. Well, what did you think about episode number 3? And she's like, well, I'm not watching it. So
Yes.
Yeah.
So then
so
she has to watch it so
she's
she
got-
can answer the
yeah,
questions.
she's got as the wife of a landman, she's duty bound to watch it.
What did she think about it?
She thought it was too much skin and too much violence. I mean, it's entertaining. I mean, there's not much, there's not a lot of reality
Right.
to it from what a landman does.
Yeah.
He should have been known as a company man.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's a company man. He's
he,
not a
he
landman.
He does tell you exactly in the very beginning exactly what a landman does.
Exactly.
When
Yep.
he's in the mask. or
Yes.
whatever with the cartel. He does say what a landman does exactly, and then his son, in episode.
He does some real land work at the end.
Yes,
he does.
He does.
Yeah,
Now other than that, there's no more landman really. It's
yeah.
more of a company man of what a company man does.
It-
I mean, the company man may talk to some of the lease owners and talks to that rancher,
Yeah.
or the
Yeah.
the rancher
Yeah.
guy that he says, if it wasn't for oil and gas, you wouldn't be a rancher.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Billy Bob's not a landman though.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the show. I also went to high school in Midland, so
Oh.
there's a lot of relevance there. I mean,
Yeah.
that is true. That Midland is kind of like that.
Yeah.
So, and if you're from Midland, and it doesn't bother me, but I mean, some people look at that and say, "Oh my gosh, that's what Midland is." But that is
Yeah.
kind of what Midland is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think that
Tim Dunn was right here. You know Tim?
No, I don't.
He owned Crown Quest.
Okay.
Billionaire now, really good man with a good faith. He was he's right down deal. But
We'll have to have him on as well.
I know. I went down there a minute ago and I couldn't find it.
But when you're looking at the show, like, do you think that it is helpful or impactful in a positive light to the oil and gas industry?
You know, I'm sure
or
some
the
people are
energy
looking at it and saying, what a bunch of hicks, and you know, I'm sure there are some people like
Yeah.
that, but I think it's a good sense of reality. It gets people.
Right. Do you think it humanizes the
It
energy?
does, and one of the things I've been doing for the last 12 years is trying to spend more time educating the public about energy. Energy is so important.
Yes.
It is not an industry, it's the industry that enables all other industries. And how do we develop good energy policies when we have a population and policymakers who are
Cutting us off at the knees.
they're not energy, they have a low energy IQ. We need to raise the energy IQ of the country and of our politicians, and so I think I think the show gets the conversation started. People are talking about energy more than I've seen before, and I think that is a good thing, whether you agree with everything in the show. Now there's one scene in there that I really can relate to.
Okay.
That I think is kind of funny, and I'm not going to use my friend's name, but in college I was a roughneck.
Okay.
And I would go out for 2 or 3 days, skip a couple of days of class, go to a rig, make a ton of money, and then come back, and then I wouldn't have to work for the rest of the month. I had a friend who was a geologist. He was a geology student, and he was a mudlogger. And for some reason, the mudlogging is an important job, but the mudloggers that they would pay out of college were making minimum wage, basically.
Oh, really?
And he was always jealous that I made all this money. So he had this idea that he wanted me to take him out and teach him how to be a roughneck.
Yeah.
And so I finally one day I did, and I said, okay, blank, I won't use his name because he'll listen to this podcast, but I said, I'm going to go look for some work. And we, at that time I was at the University of Oklahoma, we'd go out to El Reno or someplace, and early Saturday morning or Friday morning, you put your name on the bulletin board, and as they had people that were no-shows for work, they'd come pull your name off. So he rode with me down there. We both wrote our name on there, and I think neither one of us thought this through very carefully, because we assumed somehow we're gonna work together, and I'm going to show him what to do, and wink, wink, get the red wrench or whatever. And so we put my name and his name. And
after, you guys weren't together? You weren't paired together?
At 30 minutes later, they come out and say, Sandridge, truck number 17, you're going out to Elk City. And then called my other guy's name, my other friend's name, my roommate's name out and said, oh, you're going to Ardmore.
Oh, no.
And he gets to, but the reason it relates to the Landman is that first episode, Billy Bob's son gets in the truck on this first day with this crew of Spanish speaking.
Yeah.
And they're speaking Spanish he didn't understand.
Right.
Well, my friend, not only did he not know how to roughneck, but he got on a Spanish-speaking crew.
Oh, no.
And that crew was so mad because not only did he not know what he's doing, but they couldn't tell him what to do.
Right,
they didn't speak English, and he didn't speak Spanish.
Was that the last time that he ever tried to do it?
Only time he roughed. He went back to mudlogging at minimum wage.
Fair enough. You stick to what you know sometimes, all right?
Well, in mudlogging, you're in a trailer. You're in a trailer away from the rig. And you're just sitting there catching samples and doing your charts and all that.
Well, at that time, you're looking at Penthouse magazine. And,
right.
Yeah.
Not much going on as much as there is today. But in a roughneck, man, you're throwing chain.
Yeah.
You're throwing chain around pipe, and
It's been so cool to see some of those videos online, though. I've seen some of them, like the way they throw it. I'm like, there's two thoughts that go through my head. One is, oh my gosh, if somebody's in the way, that is a bad situation. That's a bad day. But two, this is the most aesthetically pleasing video I've ever watched in my life. They're so cool.
Yeah. Well, they got it down. I mean, they have to, or they'll lose a finger.
Yeah, and actually hardly anybody.
You have all your fingers.
Anybody doesn't do that now. I mean, now you rarely see injuries on drilling rigs because we basically have a zero tolerance policy. We have such high safety standards.
Right.
But back then, 50 years ago, the safety standards weren't anything like we have now, and virtually no one that I worked with had all their fingers. So this is an interesting story. In the morning, sometimes I would work on as a roustabout or on a workover rig rather than a drilling rig. And the first thing you do, this is just standard procedure no matter where you are, is in the morning you show up, you get in the truck, and you all go to the 7-Eleven, and you get your hot link sandwiches for lunch, and you buy a pair of white cotton gloves. You always wear white cotton gloves.
So you know if you're bleeding, or you know?
No, because those white cotton gloves are really lightweight, and you have a different pair every day because they wear out after a day.
Oh.
But what you don't want those gloves getting caught in the chain or some other equipment, because if it does, the glove will tear off rather than pulling your fingers into the glove. So that's what. So whenever you're going out to the rig, you get a new pair of white gloves. Okay, but
I'm like, all right. Whenever I go out to the rig, I'm gonna get myself some white gloves.
okay.
It's on your list of things to do.
So you always get the hot link sandwich at the 7-Eleven
Yes.
and
I
get
love
your
those
drink for
always.
the day, and then you get your white gloves for the day because you're
Yes.
going to do the same thing the next day.
Yeah.
So, but what happens if you go out to the rig and you don't, if you're missing a couple of fingers, you don't want those fingers flopping around.
Right.
So what happens is you will push the missing fingers back into the glove.
Oh my gosh.
So if you take a break or
Yeah.
if you stop for lunch or something
Yeah.
and you lay your gloves down, then after lunch you pick up the gloves and you say, oh, missing thumb and forefinger, that must be Michael's glove. And then
Oh,
another set of
funny.
gloves here is, oh, this one's missing the right hand, it's only got one finger missing,
my
whatever.
gosh.
And so that's how you could tell whose gloves are whose by which fingers are tucked into
Oh
the
my
glove.
gosh,
Wow.
so crazy. Man,
Yeah.
it's come a long way from what I've heard of the stories like you're telling now, and some other stories that I've heard, and it's exciting to see the energy industry evolve over time and mature as it's come along, but it is also exciting to see like what's happening next, and I know that with transitions of including technology and advancements, especially like seeing NOV have a completely manless rig, being built, I'm sure that might scare some people because they're like, okay, what about job security and things like that? But when we're looking at the safety, it's just kind of like job transitioning as it is like
And
technology
we need those people
integration.
as computer technicians and software
Right.
engineers and interpreters. I mean,
They still
we'll
need to
have
know
jobs.
what they're doing and have the reference points so that you can
Yeah.
still do it, remotely if you can. But yeah.
Well, speaking of NOV and think what's going to happen going forward,
Yeah.
as I said before, I do my daytime job
Yes.
is oil and gas, but I do a lot of nuclear advocacy
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
And NOV has last year, about just a year ago, about this time at NAPE, they announced the formation of a new wholly owned subsidiary called Shepherd Power, which is devoted to nuclear development.
Wow.
So NOV has jumped in.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of interest in oil and gas. I met with a major oil company here in Houston yesterday
Really?
about nuclear energy.
Well, that's exciting.
And
I mean, when you have people talking about it, like Elon, and all of his followers, and getting that conversation started. I mean, Jay, what do you think about the nuclear conversation? Is it something that you're like looking into or interested in?
Yeah, we're
or
not
is-
really. I mean, we're not very knowledgeable about it, really. I mean, it's kind of like AI or something.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
How does nuclear energy work? It's
Yeah.
like, well, of course, it's kind of like, how does electricity work too?
It's,
I don't know, I
it's a
turn
lot
it
of
on.
capital. It's hard for companies of
Yeah.
our size to try
It's like
and invest in
Bitcoin
it.
and mining Bitcoin and
Yeah.
spinning out coins and
Yeah.
from your natural gas wells
Right,
that you
yes.
have. I mean, I know that there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of great knowledge about what's
Right.
going on and what they can do and what but to the average Joe like me, I guess, I'm like, oh, that doesn't really, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, how NOV gets involved? NOV is it's a great company.
Very innovative.
Very innovative. But what they are competent at building big projects on time, on budget, and that's what you need with nuclear energy. Is you need developers who can have supply chain competence, research competence, manufacturing competence.
Right.
And so companies like NOV who could take their core competencies of doing big projects, it's just easy for them to move over and do nuclear.
Right.
You're just installing a nuclear reactor in place of a gas turbine or
Yeah,
something like
right,
that.
right,
So
right.
I think nuclear is going to be a big part. You asked what's coming. I think
Yeah.
nuclear is going to be a big part of the future. Jay and I probably aren't going to be part of that, but we're going to be on the sidelines cheering.
Fair
Yeah,
enough. Fair
exactly.
enough. Well, I have one more question, Jay. You have any other questions on
Is
your
there
brain?
anything else that you want to add or finish up with? Any other great thoughts for the oil and gas industry? Or
Well, I love what you're doing because I think that having these conversations, getting them out to our family, our friends, our kids, will engage us in better energy conversations. As we have better energy conversations, we'll learn more, we'll be better able to make good decisions, and then we will pressure our politicians. The politicians make decisions based on what they think we want.
Right.
We need to pressure them to make better energy policy decisions. Now, we've just done that by the election of Trump. We've
Right.
pressured, we didn't like the energy decisions, we pressured our politicians. But I think having these conversations like what you're doing is beneficial. We need to talk, we need to talk about energy all the time. It's that important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah.
My one last question is, if you were able to tell your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, knowing what you know now about your whole career and the trials and tribulations through all of it, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Just one?
Just one piece of advice.
Oh my gosh. Professionally, I would tell them to pay attention to finance.
Okay.
I
In
went
what
to-
capacity? Personal, professional?
No, professional. Well,
Okay.
both personal and professional. But I know when I was in college, my degree was in petroleum land management. We had to do courses in finance, but we just did the courses to get them checked off. We
Right.
weren't really interested.
You weren't invested
I
in it.
wasn't invested in it at all. And it wasn't until we did the private equity deal with Yorktown that all of a sudden the light bulb went off and I realized everything we do in this business is predicated on capital.
Right.
Is predicated on finance.
Right.
And I don't care what a geologist you are, what kind of engineer you are, what kind of landman you are, if you don't have capital, you're not doing any of it.
Right.
You have lots of ideas, but you don't get anything done.
Yeah.
And so I wish that I had paid attention to the capital side of the business much earlier.
Yeah.
And I think maybe my career would have been a different trajectory. So you college kids, pay attention to finance.
Fair enough.
I mean, I remember we talked about this on the last episode with another guy, but it's like it's going to cost you so much money to drill a well, and you're going to get this much oil and gas out of the ground,
Yeah.
and then here's the commodity price, and then what's the odds of that happening, right?
Right.
You want it to be 90% or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And how many locations do you have, and then different kinds of financing and equity and debt. If I'd have had that course in college, that would have been really helpful.
Yeah.
To know what the next step would be, and so I had to learn the hard way, right? I mean, a company
Yes.
loaned to own me and took advantage of what
Right.
Yeah, I didn't see the big picture. I was
didn't-
just a landman. I was just doing land work.
Right.
I didn't see the big picture in finance. Whether I don't like finance, but
Right.
even if you don't like it, you better understand it and know
Right.
how to leverage it for what you want to do in your career.
Exactly, exactly.
I need to do a syllabus and start teaching classes at SMU or something.
There you go.
Well, we got a guy that was on the show, Dr. I'm trying to think what his name was, Dr. Tom at TCU. He does that, like a private equity course.
Yeah.
But that would be that's a great suggestion. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for reminding me of that.
I've got lots
Very
of
good.
other suggestions,
Oh,
but
yes.
you only limited me to one. I'm actually going to a luncheon tomorrow with some college students,
Oh,
and I
fun.
know they're going to ask me
Yes.
for a piece of advice, and I've already written down, finish your sentences,
Yes.
write emails with proper grammar,
Yes.
things like that. But
Yes.
finance, that would be the big one. If I got to pick one.
Great. Well,
Well,
Doug, thank you for being on. We appreciate you.
It was great to visit with you. Yeah, it was great to meet you.
Yes.
Great to
Absolutely.
meet you.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, let's
you.
do it again. I'll see you next year at NAPE.
Yeah,
That'd be
there
great.
you go.
That'd be
Okay, thank you.
Where deals happen. Thank you.